and his racism is way more important, obviously, because he's a young dude and his generation is really important to where society's going and like where it's heading. And it's just this, it's a really weird dynamic when you kind of realize like, oh, wait a minute, like you didn't even think about it, but he's actually really racist. And he says he's doing it to spite his grandma, but it's like he's doing it all the time, and it's kind of really hidden. So
and so
basically what it's about.
Yeah, and so that's a great overview. So just like you just said, like he's doing it all the time. Like, what are a couple of moments?
Okay, so there's this one moment where they're on the bus, and he basically is like, I guess thinking like he wants to talk to the black people to show that he's not racist. So he like asks one of the black people for like a light, to like light a cigarette, but he doesn't have a cigarette. So it's just like, and so then he just like takes the matches and then gives them back. And it's like this really weird moment where like he obviously just did that just to like be like, oh, look at me, like I'm talking to black people. And it's like that in itself is racist. Like you think you need to like talk to the black person just to like make yourself feel better. Like that's obviously like a racist moment. Another one is where he's talking about spiting his mother, and he's like, I'm gonna bring home this black woman doctor like to make her mad. And it's like just this really racist moment where you're just like, wait a minute, like to spite your grandma, like because you don't think black people should be doctors or women or like what? It was just this really weird moment because it's like, oh wait a minute, that in itself, like I don't think you realize like you're calling your mom out on like all these racist things about how she doesn't respect black people, but in the same way like you don't, just the way you talk about black people is disrespectful and rude, and just the fact that you think that you need to, I don't know, even just strike up a conversation around other people to show that you're better than them because you're not racist is a really racist thing. Which to me was really interesting.
Totally. And there was a moment that became important with another person on the bus that I'm remembering. So it's like he had a moment asking for the light, and then a different character came on that...
Well, I think I'm thinking of two, but there's one where like his mom is, what she does, she gives like pennies to children. Like she like always gives a penny to children whenever she just talks, and she's talking to this little black boy, and he's kind of like, Mom, what are you doing? Like kind of getting mad about it. And then she goes to give him a penny, but she only has, I think it's a dime is what she has, if I'm correct. And he's like, no, don't give like the little black kid like the coin. And she hands it to him, and like this black mom freaks out and is like super mad about it. And it's a really interesting dynamic because that's like something that everybody was supposed to take as kind of racist, but it's like it's something she does to everyone. So in a way, she actually treats black people better than he does. She just treats them as people. She's not talking to them or talking to them any differently than she talks to white children, which is a really interesting moment. Totally. And then there's another moment where when they're on the bus and there's no black people on it at the time, and all these ladies are like, oh, it's just us, like we're alone finally. And it's like this disgusting moment where it's like, oh my god, we finally get to be alone. It's just these black people riding like the bus with them. Like they don't do anything to them. They don't even really talk to them unless they're like wanting to discuss with them about something. Like it's not, and it was just the grossest moment to me. I was just totally cringing the entire time because I was like, are you kidding me? Like it's a person on the bus, they're not doing anything to you. What is wrong with you? So those are a couple of moments that I thought were important.
And then the theme or why this story still matters today.
Well, I think it's interesting just to think, I think why it matters today is that people still do this all the time. Like with everything, it doesn't just have to be like a racism or anything, just in their own life. Like when you're around people, I think it's interesting to think that everybody's kind of like the sun, because I mean, it's kind of screwed up, but everybody's trying to make themselves look better around people. And so it's like, oh, like you don't even realize that you're not being a good person when you're only doing good deeds around people to make yourself look good. And like everyone can see that, then that they can obviously tell that you're not a good person, because say like when he's just talking to a black person to make himself look good around other people, like, oh, I'm above everyone. Like when you do that, that's not really in itself, that's not a good deed, or that's not a good thing. It's not making you less racist or in any other scenario that you are when you're in life just by yourself. And so I think that that's why it's still relevant, is that everybody does that all the time and nobody realizes that it's not a good thing to do.
Totally. And then a connection to your own life?
I think I connect it back to my own life because basically, I mean, I can think of like just as I talked about with my grandmother, we got to dinners a lot, and I know it's like I love going out to dinners with my grandparents, but like I hate it because my mom's always like, Riley, like you have to change, you have to look nice, like if they ask you about your nose ring, like just say I'm sorry you don't like it and move on. It's like the worst time for me because I'm just like, oh, like if they like get mad at you or like your vegetarianism, just like don't say anything. And I'm like gonna murder someone in my sleep, but okay, fine. And so then we'll go, and I don't know, my grandparents always end up talking to me about Trump, like always, every time, and like everyone's like, Riley, don't get into a fight, and I'm like, everyone's trying to fight with me, like this is not me. But we'll have like these moments where I'm like, you know what, you're not inclusive, like I'm thinking myself as a very open-minded person and like very inclusive person. I mean, like I've been that way for a really long time in my life, and I think we have really interesting conversations because I obviously have a lot of gay friends and transgender friends, and like my grandparents, like my grandma's son is gay, so she understands that aspect of it, but like transgender she does not understand at all, and she thinks it's crazy, and it's just like the weirdest encounter. But we always fight about it, and I remember just having this weird moment, just even like I think it was like a month ago with my mom. Like I was getting so mad about Trump. I was like, he's a terrible person. He hates everyone. He's hateful. He's rude. He's horrible. Like how he treats women. He's not inclusive to everyone. She's like, well, you think you're so open-minded, but like you don't include Trump supporters. And made me kind of think like my grandmother having these thoughts is not important. My grandmother's generation has like zero impact anymore. They're all like 80, like laying on their couch, watching the news, eating pancakes and whining about things. Like it literally has no effect on anyone. Like if I'm not inclusive, if I don't like accept other people's opinions, that's way worse because I'm part of like obviously a generation that's moving forward and is going to have a lot more of an effect on people than say my grandmother. So I think it's interesting for me to think like, oh shit, like I'm not inclusive enough. Like, but then I obviously try to justify it too, which I think he tries to do too, which is like, I'm like, oh, but like, I have the right reason for hating them, like, for not being inclusive that way, because like, I'm right, so like, they're wrong, and but you can't really think that way. So I think the story was interesting for me, because it just made me think of that, where it's like, oh yeah, like, just you have to remember that being that way isn't gonna help anyone, like, just, it's not gonna do anything for me if I like, just fight with people about their opinions, like, they're gonna have their own opinions, I'm gonna have mine. Like, you just have to kind of accept it, and I have to try to be obviously better than that, and like not be the way my grandparents are, and not be uninclusive to people, because that's like, I think at least is not a good thing.
Totally. Cool. And then for everything that rises must converge, the one we're just talking about, do you remember how it ends? Like, was there any resolution between him and his mother, or any like?
I don't really remember like a resolution. I just remember there being like the moment where I at least just realized like, wait a minute, I was looking at the grandma the whole time and thinking like the grandma was racist, and then all of a sudden I was like,